My name is Nicole Manger, and we will be introducing the delta analysis today together with my two colleagues, Thomas Meyer and Kathrin Weny. Yeah, right. And so all of us work at the German Federal Foreign Office in the preview section. So just a short introduction, what is preview? Preview is the GFFO's predictive analytics section. So what we do is basically crisis early warning. We do information management and we do analysis, and preview does the quantitative data-based AI-driven analytics part. And so for today, we are presenting to you a new tool that we are developing here, the delta analysis. Yes, right, you can see it here. So basically it already says in the title, the main goal is to build capacities for early action. And we are doing this using the first pilot study, the Lake Chad crisis. Just a short disclaimer here. Right, so the views that we are representing today are not official views of the German Federal Foreign Affairs. Also, this is a project that is work in progress. It's a pilot study, as I said, so we would please like to kindly ask you to not share these slides without prior official approval by us. And so I guess that we just now jumped right into the contact, and I would hand over to Kathrin for our motivation and main goals with the delta analysis.
Thank you very much, Nicole. I have a little bit an echo, so please everybody kindly mute. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here with you today. As my colleague Nicole and Thomas, I also work at Preview in the Federal Foreign Office of Germany. And I'd like to give you a short introduction what we're going to present to you today. So what is the delta analysis? Why do we call it delta? And one of the main reasons is that delta for us is the difference between where we are currently active in the field and where, according to at least our quantitative crisis prediction, should we be active, and how can we tailor our resources and our scale up of capacities accordingly. To this first area, so where we should currently be active, we found out that this is actually a kind of hard question to answer. We see that on the ground, like the operational presence is very decentral. So across the triple nexus, for example, across humanitarian or stabilization efforts, the operational presence is not centralized. And we see that also in the data structures that lie behind it. So to have an integrated view of our operational structure, we actually need to bring this together. And that led us, as Nicole said, in our information management, down a certain part that needed data harmonization and integration. And we will show to you what that means in practice later. Then the second question also is a kind of a difficult one for a couple of reasons. So we know that currently our operational presence is more focused on avoiding crisis escalation and is focused in areas where there is already a humanitarian crisis. So to describe it, we would say it's more reactive than proactive. In addition to that, we are still in a phase or in a process where the appropriate models or tools that from which political decision makers can derive actions do not fully exist yet. So we saw also there is an area where we need to work more and need to develop new methods and new solutions. And what that means for us today, I'll hand over to my colleague Nicole.
Yes, right. So basically, this is, relates to our motivation to pitch this project here in this platform, or on this platform, and introduce or start a dialogue and a discussion with you, hopefully in the Q&A. So basically, when it comes to the implementation of this project, we are very much interested in joint collaboration here. So first on the models, on the technical side, first further developing our conflict early warning models, as Thomas will present to you a bit later during the presentation, but also methods, approaches. So for example, establishing ways to bring the scientific community in strategically, but also the end users when doing co-designing to make our product at a maximum relevant for policymakers and practitioners on the ground. And then also the second point relates a bit more to the political level. So we are very much interested in joining forces to establish systematic political processes that allow for a better coordination and aligned early action, and really streamlining our, all of our different data-based approaches in this field into effective early action.
Yes, this exactly leads us to the question, what actually can data-driven solutions do in the, to transition to a more proactive early warning, early action approach? And we have split our approach in two parts. One is related to our sustainable data architecture and the methods we use. And this one deals with the challenges that we just have when it comes to data availability. So we do operate in an area where data is not harmonized, of course. So it's unstructured many times. It is very sparse. So the area that we work in, for example, doesn't have a census or survey coverage. So we also look into more innovative new methods, how to have different data. The data comes from different stakeholders. So there is a piece of work that relates only to data integration. And we also know that context-specific knowledge is really important in order to make the best use and from an analytical sense of the data. And as I mentioned before, it is an area of active research with respect to models. So we also expect that this is going to evolve over time, and we would like to be a part of that. Over to you, Nicole.
Yes, thank you. So as far as the second point, political acceptance is concerned and operative follow-up. So this is really the question of how we can make early warning tools be relevant for early action and really guide policymakers here. And we identified basically three basic points here by how data-driven tools can fulfill this function. So the first is increasing transparency, or data-driven tools have the capability to introduce standards for decision-making processes on intervention decisions, but also on the monitoring and evaluation of previous or past interventions. The second point is, as Kathrin said a bit earlier already, allowing more anticipatory planning, especially when we move from more short to midterm models into the more long-term structural perspective. We increase the capacity of policymakers to make more anticipatory, long-term and proactive policy decisions. And the third point, really coordinating resources. So this is very relevant for the delta analysis, as it really tries to coordinate international presence across the triple nexus categories. Another point that I feel is really relevant, especially in the political arena, is a transparent communication of our results and the underlying rationale of how we develop our models and our applications. And we do this here at the FFO in very, very close collaboration with our practitioners, our stabilization department, our humanitarian assistance department, to really tailor our product to be, to the needs of the end users. All right, then I guess we jump into the specific pilot study for the delta analysis. So this deals with the Lake Chad region. And there are basically three reasons for why we have picked this region as a first pilot study case. So the first, of course, is that we have an ongoing humanitarian and political relevance here for predictive analytics and early action. So of course, this is due to the ongoing conflicts in the region, be it of military nature, be it of inter-community conflicts. We have Islamic terror groups, and radicalization, especially among the youth, and as you know, the Lake Chad crisis. Also, as a second point, we have multiple risk drivers in the region. And if you look at the picture, you can see basically the most relevant mechanism here. So we have a climate-related impact, on the environmental degradation. We have increase in floods and droughts, and respective decrease in food availability or food scarcity, causing migration and displacement, leading to conflicts or driving conflicts in the sense of compounding. And then, of course, respectively, because of the conflicts and the multiple risk drivers, then respective German engagement across all triple nexus categories, so from stabilization to peace building, stabilization, humanitarian assistance together, and then SSR and aid in the longer term. Okay, I guess then I hand over to Kathrin for the approach.
Yes, thanks a lot, Nicole. And this is exactly what you see in front of you is the example of the delta analysis. As you can see, we are trying to combine across the three areas. So on the left, a map that I will explain a little bit more in detail, you can already see how we try to visualize our project, our operational presence. On the right is the risk mapping, and below you see structural indicators. And I will quickly lead you through the three approaches. An important thing that I want to mention about the delta analysis is that it is an interactive dashboard. We did choose or opt for a lot of interactivity or interaction with the user that is possible here because the data is so multi-layered, and it's really hard to find a very concise way of visualizing it in an analytically useful way. So let me lead you through it a little bit. So on the top left is this integrated map that we mentioned before, where we bring together the data that we worked on with our colleague who are the operational experts for stabilization, here in blue for humanitarian assistance, and the little red dots that you might or might not see that well for the SSR presence. Then on the right, it brings together the quantitative risk models. So what we did not do, we didn't present it on the same map to juxtapose it in this sense a little bit. And to give like the visual comparison for the user to be able to draw their own analytical conclusions. And below there are the structural methods that we will also explain to you more in detail, like what our process was to select them, what the thematic areas are we focus on, and why we chose this like that. I want to go a little bit more into detail into this project presence or operational presence on the ground, because actually we've spent a lot of time in how to decide how we visualize it, and also the generation of the data was also quite a process that we want to outline here. And as my colleague already said before, we do collaborate closely with our expert colleagues in the German Federal Foreign Office, but we do also integrate data from different ministries like the Ministry of Defense. So we do try to connect at all points from a data perspective with practitioners in the field across the triple nexus. So what you can see here in blue is actually the stabilization projects. We put also a lot of effort to find a more geographically disaggregated way of showing it. So here we are at, as we say, admin area 1, so at the regional level in a country to be able to show regions in a country where there is a stabilization projects and show other regions where there isn't. You see now this small area that is Niger and Nigeria, and you can see clearly that some areas are covered by stabilization, others aren't, especially, for example, the northeast of Nigeria. This gets compounded, as you see, in green with humanitarian interventions. And it's already possible to see where there's some overlap and where there isn't. So all the areas you see in green are covered by one or multiple humanitarian projects. The darker the green, the more projects are present. We also introduced the bubbles, so the blue or green bubbles that you can see hovering over here. And this compares how much in terms of finances goes into stabilization and how much in terms of finances goes into humanitarian intervention. And already now we can see that there are some areas like, for example, here in the west of Niger, where there is almost exclusively stabilization, but other areas, and this is in particular around the Lake Chad area, are more humanitarian. So these are our first descriptive analytics, so to say, that we can draw from this integrated data approach. And then finally, we also added our SSR presence. So these are more punctual, like dotted projects. That's also how we displayed them. Of course, these troops or these projects might go into other areas, but primarily they are focused on specific locations, on specific airports, etc. So this is also how we visualized it in order to do justice to the approach that we saw here. Yeah. And with this, I give over to Nicole for our next step. Thank you.
Nicole, you have to unmute.
Yes, I was still muted. I'm sorry. Okay, so now moving on here, you can see how we integrate this project map that Kathrin just explained and bring it together with the risk mapping. So this is basically a visualization in the map of our current conflict model. Thomas will explain to you our current conflict model and how we are developing complementary models that focus more on context-specific structural indicators. But just that you see how this setup looks like in our application and is designed. So I would now look at the structural indicators that we incorporate in our analysis as well. Yes, right. So we beyond predicting conflict potential based on conflict history, again, Thomas will elaborate on this, we want to bring in the structural dimension a bit more here with this delta analysis, basically because political decision makers and practitioners need the underlying conflict drivers in terms of these structural dimensions for their political decision making. So it's not enough to know just, when there will be a potential for a conflict, but really have the leverage to intervene and kind of form action. So we are developing this, the selection of the structural indicators in close collaboration with our political decision makers, our country-based teams and departments here at the German Federal Foreign Affairs. This is a first selection that you can see here. So those categories of indicators have been identified as particularly relevant for the Lake Chad region by our stabilization department. And so we use those in the first pilot study, Youth and Peace and Security, then YPS, so Women, Peace and Security, Climate and Security, Social Cohesion and the Rule of Law, and Demographics and Migration. And what you see here visualized is the first indicator as an example, how the setup would look like in the end. This is a focus on youth, peace and security. So here on the left-hand side, you can see a cross-time or cross-temporal assessment of developments of youth unemployment relating to youth between 15 and 25 years of age. It is interesting, for example, that you can see here for Cameroon after the financial crisis, there has been a huge increase in unemployment, whereas in the other three related countries, you don't see the same development. It would be interesting then, to discuss with the political decision makers and practitioners more the context of those structural developments. Then in the middle, so to speak, of our screen, you can see informal employment among youth in the three countries, Chad, Cameroon, and Niger. You can see that the percentage is highest in Chad and second in Cameroon and last in Niger. Which again, it shows the lack of perspectives that youth has in those related countries. I want to look at the or make a reference to the data availability here. So you might ask, why have we not included Nigeria for this informal employment assessment among youth? It's basically because here we don't have the data available for that country. On the left-hand side, for the cross-temporal assessment of developments, we only have the data available for the national level, or as Kathrin would say, the admin 0 level. Not the geographic disaggregation. And then on the right-hand side, you can see the literacy rates among young women. We also have it for men. So here we have the data available for the admin 1 or for the subnational level. And we use those data availability here in that category, or in that with that indicator, to visualize it in the project map. So what is really important to us is to communicate to you. So they are just indicators or data that are not available, and we try to always in a dialogue with the practitioners to find visualizations, how to smartly and intelligently deal with this lack of data availability, while still not compromising on the analytical functions of our analysis here. Okay, then I would hand over to Thomas to give you more context on the genesis, so to speak, of our previous conflict model, or our current conflict model, which we use for the national interministerial crisis early warning system here in Germany, and then our future vision with respect to the more context-specific regional models.
So thank you very much. So my name is Thomas, and I'm more or less responsible for the modeling approaches here in the Federal Foreign Office. And what we implemented is a two-step approach. And you can divide both approaches. One is more or less process-driven, and the second one is more or less driven by the political stakeholders. And what I will focus first is starting with the process-driven approach. And it's the process is the German interministerial early warning process. And the process more or less dictates or determines the modeling approaches. So for example, the prediction horizon is 1 to 24 months ahead, so in the future. And it's the spatial resolution, what we are using here in this process is a country level. And what we use here is not a classification model, so we don't try to say what is the estimated probability of seeing an event. It's a regression approach, so we try to give a best estimate of a future value and the absolute future value into the future, and looking at the data which we see in the past. And as Kathrin and Nicole already mentioned, the most challenging problem we also have in the modeling section is the data availability. And but let me give you first a short glance at our global modeling approach. The focus is here absolutely to find the best performing model. So we try to minimize an estimation error, and not so much. And in the second priority, it's the interpretability of this model. But the first, and most important indicator in this approach is to find a best performing model, and we do it with a machine learning approach. And I don't want to deep too far or too deep in this field. It's a regression model. Normally, we do or we fit different modeling approaches. So, for example, a random forest or a gradient boosting or a support vector machine or something like that, and find the best model what drives or which minimizes the error the best for the next or for the upcoming 1 to 24 months. So the temporal resolution is month. So we are dealing with a country month problem in this case. And what are the outcome variables? It's more or less 3 outcome variables. It's the number of security-related events, so the absolute number, which we can find in a given country and a given month. And another is the sum of all fatalities and the number of protest events. So you might ask yourself, which is the databases for that? We use for most of our models, we use ACLED, the Armed Conflict Location Event Dataset. And what we are starting with and where we have much data and good data is the conflict data, and we have it in a high resolution and a good time coverage, and so it's possible to extract more or less 1,500 features from this kinds of data, and it's different features. It is on one hand side, of course, conflict history. It's actor-based data, and it's interaction data. Those kinds of features we can derive from ACLED itself. And we are also focusing on structural indicators, but most structural indicators, as you have already heard, have a temporal resolution of years, and you have also a lag period of your 1 year for most of the indicators. For example, if you're dealing with the World Development Indicators or something like that, you have now available the data in most cases up until 2019 and not 2020 and not 2021. So this is one kind of problem we have to deal with, and it's on a year resolution and not on a monthly resolution. So it's very hard for the structural indicators to be better predictors in this modeling approach than for the high resolution data, which we can find in conflict data. So the most important features are actually it's a conflict history, and you can see 2 outputs on the bottom left side. One is a so-called ice plot, individual conditional expectations for one country, which is a sampling approach where you can see if you change a feature and you keep all features in the model stable, and if you change one feature, how will the outcome variable change, and one prediction with prediction intervals. So the 80% and the 95% prediction intervals is shown on the right side of the slide. And of course, we don't take a model accounting for 1,500 features. What we do is here a recursive feature elimination and try to find the best feature for the given time period we try to estimate. And most outcome variables have 20 to 50 features all in all. And yeah, as I already mentioned, most of the features are conflict driven. Yes, thank you. Next, please. So, as Kathrin and Nicole already mentioned, now we try to go one step further. So if you, in the first step, we try to say or to answer the question on which 5 or 6 countries we want to focus in Germany in the upcoming 6 months. And now, if we have the countries, we can go and take a region. So it's not Nigeria, it's the Lake Chad Basin region. We are now focusing in this, but actually we can incorporate this approach to arbitrary regions. So it mustn't be UN regions or something like that. If we say focus on 3 or 4 countries, we can do it in an arbitrary way. And in this slide, you can see a prediction for the Lake Chad Basin. And as you can see, what changed here in this modeling approach, actually the data derivation is more or less the same than we used on a country level. It's just the spatial resolution we changed here. But the first and most important feature, or the most important point of view for this model is the interpretability and not so much the performance. And it's not the national process which guides this model. It's the it's the political stakeholder process, or the political stakeholder who drives this process. And both models are complementary to each other. So you can see that we have, it's just the driver which changes, but it's not the modeling approach itself which is different from each other. So both models are complementary to each other. And what you can see here, we are not focusing on the country level. We are focusing here on a provincial level. So it's a higher spatial resolution we are facing, or we are observing here. And the key challenges remain the same, but on a higher magnitude, because it's harder to find the features on a lower spatial resolution, so on a provincial level, than to find those kinds of features on a country level. And if you are dealing with structural indicators, it becomes even worse, because you don't have in most cases the spatial resolution you need, and you also don't have the temporal resolution you need for this kind of approach. But you have also chances, out of my opinion. Can you scroll down, please, a little bit? Thank you. It's on the one hand side, you can discover, and the model can incorporate with regional patterns, because you are not fitting a model on the whole world and on all available countries. You're just focusing on one region, which is beneficial, or which can be beneficial for the next step. And it's also much easier to find suitable data if you are only focusing on one region instead of the whole world. Those kinds of modeling approaches give us also a higher flexibility, because you don't have a process which drives the model. You can say, okay, if we try to focus on structural indicators, and if we have the data for the structural indicators, we can guide our model towards a better prediction with structural indicators and say, okay, please focus on this kind of feature if we have the data. But it's a big chance, out of my opinion, even though the model you are seeing here is mostly incorporating the conflict history. So it's a future approach. I know it's a big approach, but I think it's also a big chance, and a big chance to bring in also the expert knowledge into our models. And this makes it very interesting also from a data science point of view, so technical speaking. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Thomas. So it is also extremely important to us to be very transparent with our methods. So yeah, that's why we're really happy to be able to integrate all our expertise. We would like to quickly give you a small outlook of what we are planning to do in future, to give you more an outlook of our future activities. So we do think about how to develop this tool further, and that is especially to extend this operational map more beyond the operational presence that's only including Germany. And of course, to continuously, as Thomas already really nicely outlined, to develop our methods and tools to be most appropriate for the political decision-making in a given context. Nicole, you want to take over quickly?
Yes, so as a next step, we want to expand our scope, so our thematic scope. Beyond also showing the interactions between the different triple nexus categories, we would like to include different categories like political alliances. Of course, there we have to discuss like how to make those standardized or visualize them in a standardized manner, and then also develop tools for developing and monitoring. So this is basically important, of course, to give a transparent assessment of how the impact of our interventions has been on the ground, and then also to give a better transparent assessment of whether resources are efficiently spent and wisely spent, and then adapt.
And finally, and this is why we're also so grateful that we are able to present here today, we would like to work on this with a focus on collaboration and networks, because it is technically very challenging. The processes are very challenging. This is really what we would like to do, to take this opportunity and exchange methods and ideas, and of course also ideas for improving processes around this. We are connected in academia, so we do work together with university and experts as well in order to get the necessary depth in our methods and the expert knowledge in certain thematic areas. And we do also work with colleagues in the international community quite closely in order to be able to do this in a very integrated way. I will now show you our contact details, because this is the end of our presentation. Thank you very much for giving us the time, for listening to us. Do feel free to reach out to us if you see connection points or if you have questions. And I would like to hand over to our colleagues. And yeah, thank you very much. I hope we will have some time to discuss in the end.
Yeah, so there will be a Q&A, but first we will have a short response by our Dutch colleagues, or our Dutch colleague Thierry van der Horst. I will share his presentation.
Yes, thank you very much, Nicole, and Kathrin and Thomas as well, because this has been very enlightening. It's very interesting to see your work, even though I saw it at least briefly before. I think it's really great what you did with your team, and it's I think you realize that, but it's a blessing that you have this dedicated team to tackle these challenges. Many of these challenges are similar to the ones we're facing. Many of you know that we are working in this field for quite a while now and are trying to improve our early warning processes by more quantitative input. We, however, do not have a dedicated team to support us on the data side of things. I myself am just a humble policy officer in the security policy department, but nevertheless we managed to pick some low-hanging fruits to support our work. And yeah, very similar to what the German colleagues just showed, we are trying to yeah, look at different parts of our work and inform that in different manners. The first slide, I think you can go to the next page, is very much like Thomas mentioned earlier, the structural indicators. We call it root causes for conflict. We've tried to map these and bring them all together. Here's one overview of our root causes dashboard as it is now. You can see the Fragile States Index, which combines all the reports from earlier years. It's not really high tech, but it's basic visualization of reports that otherwise would have to be looked at one by one. And that's also what we did on the next slide. It's just a couple of yeah, screenshots from our tooling to show you how we are working. Yeah, so this is another the Positive Peace Index. Many of you know it. This screenshot was taken a while ago, I think, but here you see well, the Institute for Economics and Peace. And on the next slide, you can see some yeah, different indicators that we combined. Most of them are open source, and some, yeah, maybe not in this slide. Yeah, one is yeah, based on our own data. So this is basically just to get a broad overview of the structural trends and causes of conflict. Another tool we've developed, if you go to the next slide, is basically a visualization of the ACLED data. We call it the security monitor. Yeah, there you are. This is the overview page. But if you go to the next slide, you get a little bit of a feeling of how this tool works. It enables the user to compare periods, look at conflicts, incidents in different parts of the area you're interested in. And I think on the next slide, there's another example of a screenshot. Oh no, this is already a new tool. It doesn't matter because this is the most important tool, and it looks also a lot like what Thomas just showed us before Kathrin and Nicole took over. This is our risk monitor, and here together with the people in our data lab, we try to yeah, also use different models to predict the risk of violent incidents happening, also based on the conflict data by ACLED, combined with other factors as well. And those indicators are, well, as Thomas already also pointed out, challenging to bring together, to combine. The matter of data availability, data quality, frequency, resolution, all those things are very similar to the challenges that our people in our data lab or data scientists had to tackle. But nevertheless, this is a really interesting proof of concept. We don't use it at the moment to really inform our policy, but we're working on expanding these models and changing them. Also, we're working on more regional models as well to be able to incorporate the outcomes of this risk monitor in our early warning process, which we've changed a little bit over the past few months. It's an interdepartmental working group that's doing this early warning, early action work, and we have two streams in that. One is more ad hoc and it's more reactive. The other one is trying to be more proactive. So also, I think Kathrin mentioned this wish to go from reactive to proactive is something that we really have in our ministry as well. And these are just some examples of the tooling we've been developing over the past couple of years, and there's many more that I can't show you yet. Many more plans in the pipeline to bring it all together. And also, your data analysis is in many ways a great inspiration for us to see what we can do in the future and also bring together different parts of our ministry more into this. So combining not only the stability factors, but also the other parts of the triple nexus, so the aid and the humanitarian worlds more into this, and also to really see where we can be most relevant and where early warning, especially early action, is most useful, and also maybe helps us to focus our attention, because we're a small country with limited capacity, and always need to make choices where to focus our resources and our time. And these tools, they help us do that. So that's just a quick response to your story, to share our side of what we've been doing over the past couple of years. I'm happy to take questions, also happy to discuss further offline, or to bring colleagues in contact to the people who are working in our data lab. So you can send me an email. My email address is on the screen. And I want to congratulate the German colleagues on the work they've done. It's really impressive in a short amount of time that you've short amount of time. It always takes a while, but it's really impressive to see what you've achieved in the last couple of months, I think. So over to the Q&A, I guess. Back to Nicole.
Yeah, thank you so much, Thierry. And we really look forward to also collaborating in the future. And thank you for the reaction. I would like to quickly introduce a Q&A. I did try to answer some of the questions in the chat, but I know there might be many more that I might have overlooked while I was presenting. So if you could maybe give us a quick note that you would like to say something in the chat, and then unmute your mic, and please do feel free to ask your question directly to the whole crowd. So, for example, there was a question, I think, of Mark, who I could not answer yet. So maybe, Mark, you want to take the first step.
Yes, thank you, Kathrin. Do humanitarian international NGOs on the ground share data with your project? And if so, do they do so on a daily or weekly basis? Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. That's a really good question, and we wish we had data on a like a live and real-time basis. That would be the ideal case, and to be always able to accurately depict what is happening. But so far that is not the case. We do work with our internal data, so with our internal operational presence as of now. But we do note that in the future, this we would like to extend the width of projects that are ongoing on the ground.
Okay. Hello, can you hear me? Okay. My question is based on the data that was gathered at the Lake Chad region. Nigeria was excluded. So I'm wondering what was the challenges that made Nigeria to be excluded in that data collection? Because Nigeria, I think, I believe, has high level of indicators that could be gathered from that region, because most of the conflicts and crises that are emanating in the region are really, really happening in the northern part of Nigeria, which is close to the Lake Chad region. So what are the challenges? And I think so that we could be able to network and be able to surmount the challenge in future, so you can get a lot of data to make your research very rich. Thank you.
Thank you. And we would like to take you up on the networking and maybe filling data gaps that we have. That would definitely be a goal for us. The data point where Nigeria was included was informal employment, because we rely on ILO data in this case. And there Nigeria was not included, but that's of course suboptimal, and wherever we can, we would like to fill that. So please, if there's a possibility, feel free to reach out and we can get in touch and discuss that. Thank you. So Thomas, maybe you would like to take the question in the chat from Paul. Have your predictive models influenced decision-making, or have they been purely experimental thus far?
first modeling approach I provided is it's process driven, and it already influences the German activities in some fields, and the regional model I explained is just now in an experimental stage. But if we get better data, I think we can also give valuable hints to our political stakeholders.
Thank you for your answer, and thank you for the interesting presentation. I'm a student, a German student at Leiden University in the Netherlands, so it was interesting to get the insights from the Dutch Ministry of Foreign Affairs as well. So if I might ask a follow-up question, because I'm very interested in the intersection of international relations and data science. Have you put the models you run into a machine learning operation yet, or do you just rerun the code every time you try to predict the events for a new month? If you say they have been used to inform policy making choices.
No, actually, we extract the past data which we can get as indicators, and now we have I think it's 1 year now that we have a more or less stable model for the first stage, and rerun this model with updated data, of course, and try to further forecast. We try, we also try to further expand our feature set, mostly with structural indicators, but most of the structural indicators are hard to get, and most of the structural indicators don't have the kind of coverage and also global coverage we need. So you are dealing with a lot of imputation tasks if you don't incorporate or don't try to throw away some observations, which is not our goal. So we do a lot of imputation, of course, on the structural features, and this kind becomes more obvious if you are dealing on a subnational level, where we have more limited data than we have on a national level.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And then we have another question from the chat from Leonard. Does the study also include data from development projects? And that is a very good question, because the project, yes, does include the data. The map we've shown you, though, doesn't yet. So this is also one of our immediate next steps to integrate this additional layer to truly be able to visualize the triple nexus. Yeah. Thank you very much for that question, though. Are there any other questions? Because as far as I can see, there are no other questions from the chat. Thomas, have we thought about a hierarchical model? I think that's a question you've asked, or we've already thought about, but you might be able to give the background to that.
Yes, of course, we do think about incorporating with hierarchical models. So it's it's a question of doing all the time we can spend in modeling. It's not my only job to do modeling. I wish it would be, but actually it's not. But of course, we will try further modeling approaches in the future. We do a lot, and at the very beginning times of preview, we also incorporated a lot with classification tests and not with regression tests. And now we're dealing with regression tests and not what was with classification tests. So the modeling approaches change over time, and if it's the yeah, if the process needs it, or the political decision maker needs it, we are very flexible in terms of the technical side of modeling.
Yeah, Viola, do you want to maybe unmute and ask the question? So, because I think there were a bunch of questions included, and I think it's a very good one.
Yes, thanks very much. So in terms of the mapping that you're doing, do you differentiate between the level that the project works on, like the strategic, operational, or tactical? So for example, if it's just plain capacity building, or if it does more long-term institution building? And then the second question is, do you also monitor the presence and flows of small arms and light weapons?
This is a really good question that goes to the core of our mapping and what we want to achieve with the mapping. And relating to the first part, like, do we differentiate between of the level or the goal of the project? We do. So what we couldn't show, because it was a presentation and not the dashboard itself, we do have the metadata to each project attached. And so making this distinction between strategic or operational is possible within it. Of course, it requires interaction by the user, but that might be an advantage of it. However, if there are ideas how we could better do that, then we're always open to it, of course, as well. And then small arms and light weapons. We do not do this in this project. There is a different stream of our work where we do monitor that, but it's not integrated in the delta analysis. Thank you. So how many people do we have to working on this initiative? So we are a cross-sectional team. So you see the 3 people who are most involved in it have presented to you today. But we do have an infrastructure in the background where we have technological support. We have a data management system. We have a DevOps system. So I would say that one way or another, this is a team effort. Our team is rather small. It's around 10 people overall, exactly. So I hope that that answers the question on the structure and on the size of the team. And of course, as Nicole said, the content, so the data, comes from a bunch of different experts in the house. So we alone, we do not have ownership over the data. We are more the people who visualize it and who try to bring the models and the quantitative predictive analytics to the table, and who do the visualization. So maybe, yeah, that answers your question. And I see now that Nicole has also posted again our email addresses in case you would like to get in touch. We are very, very open to that, and we do appreciate all your feedback and all your questions. I hope I did not overlook anything. We have 1 minute to go according to our great technical moderator, whom I would also like to thank. And if there are no other burning questions, I think that was our session. Thank you very much.